A 4-year-old beggar girl finds a millionaire's pregnant wife covered in buzzards on a rural road. But when she goes to help her, someone appears behind her and does something terrible. Watch until the end, you won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scorching sun of rural Oklahoma beat down mercilessly on the dirt road, creating heat waves that distorted the dry landscape. Lily, just 4 years old, walked barefoot through the red dust, her small feet already calloused from daily treks in search of survival. Her torn and dirty clothes betrayed days without a decent bath, and her tangled hair was covered in the same dust that covered everything in that forgotten region. The little girl held a torn plastic bag, collecting cans and bottles that she could exchange for a few coins in town. Her big, expressive eyes constantly searched for anything that might be useful, a skill she had developed to survive alone on the streets since she could remember. She had no known family, no fixed home. She slept where the night found her, usually in some protected corner of the few commercial establishments in the small town. That Tuesday morning, while rummaging through the bushes by the side of the road looking for trash discarded by drivers, Lily heard a strange sound coming from further ahead. They were high-pitched, repetitive cries that she couldn't identify. Curious and always alert, the girl approached slowly, hiding behind a withered tree to observe. What she saw left her paralyzed with horror and confusion. A woman was lying in the middle of the dirt track, motionless, with buzzards flying in low circles above her. The blackbirds screamed and fought for position, as if deciding whether to land. The scene was terrifying for anyone, but for a 4-year-old child, it was almost incomprehensible. Lily watched for a few minutes, her little heart beating fast in her chest. The woman wore expensive, clean clothes, completely different from anything the girl had ever seen on the people in town. Her dress was made of a fine, delicate fabric, and even dirty with dust. It was possible to see that she was someone of means. Her blonde hair was scattered around her pale face, and she looked very young. Overcoming her fear of the buzzards, Lily came out from behind the tree and began to approach slowly. Something inside her, an instinct that she herself did not understand, impelled her to help that woman. Maybe it was the same force that made her share her meager food with stray dogs when she got something more substantial, or that led her to seek shelter for injured animals. "Lady, wake up," said Lily in her childish voice. Still keeping her distance from the buzzards that were flying lower and lower, the woman did not respond, but Lily could see that her chest was rising and falling slowly. She was alive, just unconscious. The girl looked around, looking for help, but the road was completely deserted. It was her and that strange woman under the relentless sun and the hungry buzzards. That's when she heard the sound of a car approaching quickly down the road. Lily turned, hoping to see someone who could help, but what she saw made her take a few steps back. An older woman, with grey hair tied in a strict bun, jumped out of a luxurious black car with a look of panic on her face. "Get away from her immediately," the woman shouted, running towards the fallen figure. "Get out of here, kid!" Eleanor, for that was the name of the woman who had arrived, pushed Lily away with surprising force for someone her age. Her eyes were cold and calculating, and there was something in her posture that conveyed absolute authority. She knelt beside the unconscious woman, checking her pulse and breathing with precise professional movements. "Tiffany! Tiffany, can you hear me?" called Eleanor, tapping the woman's face lightly. "Come on, I need to get you to the hospital." Lily watched everything from a distance, confused by the situation. The woman named Eleanor seemed to know the unconscious girl well, and her actions indicated medical knowledge. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at Lily that made her feel a chill in her stomach, a sense of danger that she couldn't explain. With mechanical efficiency, Eleanor carried Tiffany to the car, placing her in the back seat with calculated care. Before leaving, she turned to Lily once more, pointing her finger at her threateningly. "Forget what you saw here today, kid, and don't come near this road again, understand?" The car drove off in a cloud of red dust, leaving Lily alone on the road with more questions than answers. Something about that situation wasn't right, but she couldn't figure out what. All she knew was that that young, beautiful woman was in danger, and that the older woman, despite having come to help, conveyed a sense of threat that made all of Lily's survival instincts kick in. At the small-town hospital, Tiffany Sinclair slowly awoke, her green eyes adjusting to the cold white light of the medical environment. Her head throbbed, and she felt an extreme weakness that seemed to drain all her energy. Beside her, Eleanor was organizing some papers with the efficiency she showed in everything she did, her attentive eyes watching every movement of the patient. "How are you feeling, dear?" asked Eleanor, her voice carrying a concern that seemed genuine, but that had something rehearsed about it. "You gave us a big scare." Tiffany tried to remember what had happened. Confused fragments came to her mind. The sensation of increasing dizziness, the fall, and then nothing. Just darkness until she woke up there. Her hand instinctively went to her abdomen, where a small bulge revealed the 3 months of pregnancy she was carrying. "The baby. Is everything okay with the baby?" she murmured, her voice hoarse and weak. "Everything is perfectly fine," replied Eleanor quickly, before the doctor could even speak. "Dr. Miller has already confirmed. It was just an episode of severe malnutrition, nothing that we can't solve with proper treatment." The doctor, a middle-aged man with a worried expression, approached the bed. Dr. David Miller knew the Sinclair family well. They were the only millionaires in the region, and whenever they needed medical care, they came accompanied by the efficient private nurse who had been taking care of the family for 15 years. "Mrs. Sinclair," said the doctor, consulting the clipboard, "your tests show worrying levels of malnutrition. When was the last time you had a complete meal?" Tiffany frowned, trying to remember. Eleanor had prepared her breakfast as she always did, but it was always something very light. And lunch? She didn't even remember having lunch. I don't remember exactly," she admitted, feeling a mental confusion that made her even more worried. "Eleanor has been taking care of my diet since I got pregnant. She said it's important to follow a special diet." "Exactly," interjected Eleanor, her tone professional and authoritative. "The patient was experiencing severe nausea, so we adapted her diet to small portions. It's a common protocol in cases like hers. I have 15 years of experience taking care of this family." Dr. Miller nodded, but something in his expression suggested that he wasn't completely convinced. The levels of malnutrition were more severe than would be expected even with intense morning sickness. However, the presence of the private nurse and the confidence she demonstrated in her explanations made him hesitate to question the treatment. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Robert Sinclair arrived in his imported car, his face tense with worry. At 45 years old, he was an imposing man, accustomed to having control over all situations. His fortune came from real estate and ranches in the region, and he had built an empire based on quick decisions and trust in competent people. Upon entering the room, his eyes immediately searched for Tiffany, and the relief was visible when he saw her awake. He approached the bed, holding his wife's delicate hand, noticing how pale and thin she was for someone who should be gaining weight with the pregnancy. "What happened?" he asked, addressing both Tiffany and Eleanor. "She was found unconscious on the road leading to the ranch," explained Eleanor, carefully omitting any mention of the child who had arrived at the scene first. "She probably went out for a walk and had a sudden episode due to pregnancy nausea." Tiffany looked at Eleanor in confusion. She didn't remember deciding to walk to the road. In fact, she didn't remember almost anything from the last few days. It was as if her mind was enveloped in a constant fog that made it difficult to maintain clear thoughts or form solid memories. "I don't remember going out for a walk," she said slowly, trying to force her mind to work. How did I get there? Darling, you've been very confused lately, said Eleanor with exaggerated patience. It's normal in pregnancy. Your body is going through a lot of changes, and this affects memory and mental clarity. Robert frowned. Tiffany had always been an extremely organized woman with an excellent memory. Seeing her so confused and fragile worried him deeply. However, Eleanor had taken care of his first wife throughout her illness and had always demonstrated absolute competence. He trusted her more than anyone else. The important thing is that you're okay now, he said, kissing Tiffany's forehead. Eleanor will make sure this doesn't happen again. Of course, replied Eleanor, already organizing the medications she had brought in her professional bag. I'll adjust the care protocol. It may be necessary to increase supplementation. Tiffany watched the bottles that Eleanor handled. There were many medications for a normal pregnancy, but the nurse always explained that each had its specific function. Vitamins, supplements, something for the nausea, another for the anxiety that apparently she was developing. While the adults talked, no one noticed the small figure watching through the ground floor window. Lily had followed the car to the hospital, moved by a concern that she herself did not understand. Hidden behind a bush in the front garden, she could partially see the room where the blonde woman was hospitalized. The girl did not fully understand what she had witnessed on the road, but something inside her told her that that woman needed help. And something else, something that her survival instincts on the streets had learned to recognize, said that the older woman was not what she seemed to be. When she saw Robert leave the hospital, Lily hid better. She had seen that man a few times in town, always in expensive cars, always well-dressed. People spoke of him with a mixture of respect and fear. He was the richest man in the region, someone who could solve any problem with money, but who could also destroy the life of anyone who contradicted him. The girl stayed there until dark, watching the lights of the room where the blonde woman was. Something was wrong, she was sure of it. And even being just a 4-year-old child living on the streets, Lily felt that in some way she would be important to discovering the truth. 2 weeks had passed since the incident on the road, and Tiffany had returned to the Sinclair mansion with strict instructions for absolute rest. The imposing colonial-style house stood in the middle of a vast property, surrounded by manicured gardens and high walls that isolated it from the outside world. For Tiffany, those luxurious walls were beginning to feel more like a prison than a home. Eleanor had taken total control over her routine. Each meal was carefully planned and supervised, each medication administered at exact times, each activity monitored with military precision. The nurse had even suggested that Tiffany avoid leaving the main rooms of the house, claiming that physical exertion could be harmful to the pregnancy. Your condition requires special care, repeated Eleanor whenever Tiffany questioned the restrictions. Remember what happened on the road. We can't allow that to happen again. That Thursday morning, Tiffany was sitting on the back porch, trying to enjoy a few minutes of sunshine, while Eleanor prepared her morning medications. The garden stretched as far as her eye could see, and beyond it, she could see part of the fence that marked the property. It was there that her gaze stopped when she noticed a small figure moving among the bushes on the outside. It was a child, a little girl with dark hair and tattered clothes, rummaging around near the fence as if looking for something. Tiffany leaned forward, trying to see better. There was something familiar about that figure, but she couldn't identify what. Her memory was still hazy, fragmented by weeks of mental confusion that she couldn't explain. The girl raised her head, and their eyes met across the distance. Even from afar, Tiffany could see the child's extreme thinness, the way her clothes seemed too big for her small body. Something inside her chest tightened, a maternal instinct that had intensified with the pregnancy. "Eleanor?" she called when the nurse appeared on the porch with a tray full of pills and a glass of milk. "There's a child out there. She seems hungry." Eleanor followed Tiffany's gaze, and her eyes hardened when she saw Lily. The nurse immediately recognized the girl from the road, the one who had witnessed Tiffany's fainting. Her presence there couldn't be a coincidence. "It's just one of the town's kids who wander around here," said Eleanor with disdain, placing the medications on the table. "Probably looking for something to steal. You shouldn't worry about it." "But she seems to be in need," insisted Tiffany, trying to get up from the chair. "Maybe we can—" "Absolutely not," cut Eleanor, her voice taking on a tone of authority that did not allow for challenge. "People like that represent danger. They may be sick, they may bring problems. Your health and the baby's a priority." Tiffany sat down again, but her eyes remained fixed on the child. There was something in the girl's posture, in the way she looked at the mansion, that stirred vague memories in her mind. It was as if she had seen that child before, but she couldn't remember where or when. "Take your medication," ordered Eleanor, holding out the first pill. "And stop looking over there. That kind of thinking isn't healthy for a pregnant woman." Reluctantly, Tiffany swallowed the pills one by one, each leaving a bitter taste in her mouth. In recent days, she had noticed that she felt even more sleepy and confused after taking the medication. But whenever she questioned it, Eleanor explained that it was normal, that her body was adapting to the treatment. Later that day, while Eleanor was busy organizing medical supplies in the office, Tiffany managed to sneak out to the garden. The feeling of fresh air on her face was liberating after weeks confined indoors. She walked towards the fence, hoping to find the child again. To her surprise, the girl was still there, now sitting under a tree on the outside of the property. Lily had spent the whole day watching the house, moved by an intuition that she couldn't explain. When she saw the blonde woman approaching, she stood up quickly, ready to run away if necessary. "Hello," said Tiffany softly, getting as close as possible to the fence. "What's your name?" Lily hesitated for a moment, studying the woman's face. There was kindness in her eyes, a gentleness that contrasted drastically with the coldness of the older woman she had seen at the hospital. "Lily," she replied finally, her voice small but clear. "Lily? What a pretty name," said Tiffany, smiling for the first time in weeks. "Do you live around here?" The girl shook her head negatively. "I live on the streets. I look for cans to trade for food." Tiffany's heart broke upon hearing this. Such a small child, alone in the world, struggling to survive. Without thinking twice, she searched in her pockets and found some bills that she had saved. "Lily, are you hungry?" she asked, holding the money out through the fence. The girl's eyes widened at the sight of the money. It was more than she had seen in her entire life. But instead of taking it immediately, she looked into Tiffany's eyes with a seriousness surprising for her age. "Are you sick?" asked Lily. "I saw you when you were lying on the road. The bad woman took you away." Tiffany felt a shock run through her body. You saw me on the road? You were there?" "I was. I was going to try to help you, but the bad woman told me to go away. She has bad eyes." Fragments of memory began to form in Tiffany's mind. She vaguely remembered a small voice calling out to her, someone trying to help before Eleanor arrived. But how had such a small child gotten there first? "Lily, do you remember anything else about that day?" "I remember you were very weak, like you hadn't eaten, like I get sometimes," said the girl with brutal honesty. "And I remember the bad woman got angry when she saw me, like she didn't want anyone to know you were hurt." Before Tiffany could ask any more questions, she heard footsteps approaching quickly through the garden. It was Eleanor, her face contorted with fury at seeing her employer talking to the child through the fence. "Tiffany, what do you think you're doing?" shouted the nurse, running towards them. "Get back to the house immediately." Lily, recognizing the danger, grabbed the money quickly and ran away, disappearing among the trees before Eleanor could reach her. Tiffany stood still, watching the child flee, feeling that an important part of her memory had just been unearthed. "How dare you disobey my instructions?" reprimanded Eleanor, holding Tiffany's arm more tightly than necessary. "And on top of that, talking to that That little tramp. She's just a hungry child, defended Tiffany, but her voice came out weaker than she intended. She's a danger, replied Eleanor sharply, dragging Tiffany back to the house. And you're going to have an extra dose of sedative today. You're clearly having episodes of mental confusion. As she was forced back to the mansion, Tiffany looked over her shoulder one last time, trying to spot Lily among the trees. The conversation with the girl had awakened something in her mind, a suspicion that she couldn't fully formulate, but that grew like a seed planted in fertile soil. In the days following the meeting with Lily, Tiffany began to subtly question Eleanor's practices. The conversation with the girl had planted a seed of doubt that grew with each dose of medication, each controlled meal, each moment of mental confusion that followed the nurse's care. "Eleanor," she said one morning, looking at the tray full of pills, "could you explain to me exactly what each of these medications is for?" The nurse paused for a fraction of a second before answering, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. "Of course, dear. This one is folic acid for the baby's development. This one is iron for anemia. This one helps with morning sickness. And these two are special vitamins for pregnant women at risk." "Pregnant women at risk?" repeated Tiffany, frowning. "But Dr. Miller didn't say anything about me being a high-risk case." "Small-town doctors don't always have knowledge of the most subtle complications," replied Eleanor condescendingly. "I have years of experience with complicated pregnancies. Remember, I took care of your husband's first wife throughout her pregnancy." Tiffany nodded, but something in the answer didn't completely satisfy her. She had tried to talk to Robert about his first wife, but he always changed the subject, saying only that it had been a very difficult period and that he preferred not to talk about it. That afternoon, while Eleanor was busy in the office ordering medical supplies, Tiffany decided to explore the house a little more. It was the first time in weeks that she felt energetic enough to walk through the corridors without feeling dizzy. That's when she discovered a locked door on the second floor, something she had never noticed before. When she asked one of the maids about the room, the woman seemed nervous and whispered that it was the old room of Robert's first wife and that Eleanor had asked no one to enter there. "Why would she lock the room?" asked Tiffany, curious. "I don't know, ma'am," replied the maid, looking around nervously. "But Mrs. Eleanor said that Mr. Sinclair would be very upset if anyone touched the things in there." Meanwhile, outside the property, Lily had established a routine of observation. Every day, she positioned herself in different spots around the fence, studying the movements of the house. There was something about the blonde woman that awakened her protective instincts, and she couldn't completely walk away. It was during one of these vigils that she noticed something strange. Whenever Eleanor left the mansion to go to town, she carried a small, discreet briefcase, and she always returned with the same briefcase, only visibly heavier. Lily, with her street experience, recognized suspicious behavior when she saw it. On a particularly hot afternoon, Lily managed to get closer to the house when she saw that Eleanor had left, and Tiffany was alone in the garden. The woman seemed to be looking for something or someone, constantly looking towards the fence. "Lily!" called Tiffany softly, hoping the girl could hear her. The child emerged from the bushes like a ghost, her movements silent and cautious. "Are you okay?" she asked, noticing that Tiffany seemed even paler than the last time. "I'm confused," admitted Tiffany, approaching the fence again. "I feel like I'm living in a fog. I can't think straight, I can't remember things." Lily studied the woman's face with the sharp perception of someone who has learned to read people to survive. "Does the bad woman give you medicine?" "Yes, lots of medicine. She says it's to keep me healthy and protect the baby." "My mom had a friend who got like that," said Lily thoughtfully. "Always tired, always confused. Her boyfriend gave her medicine to keep her quiet. My mom said he was poisoning her slowly." The child's words hit Tiffany like a lightning bolt. Poisoning? Could it be that Eleanor was... No, it was an absurd idea. Eleanor had taken care of the family for 15 years. She had Robert's complete trust. "Lily, do you remember your mom?" asked Tiffany, trying to change the subject. "A little bit. She was pretty like you, but she got very sick. Then she left and I was alone," replied the girl with the cruel naturalness of childhood. Tiffany felt tears welling up in her eyes. "You don't have anyone else? No relatives?" "No, but it's okay. I know how to take care of myself." At that moment, the sound of a car arriving alerted them. Eleanor had returned earlier than expected. Lily disappeared quickly among the trees, but not before whispering urgently, "Lady, be careful of the bad woman. She has eyes of a person who hurts." Tiffany ran back to the house, arriving at the back garden just seconds before Eleanor appeared through the kitchen door. The nurse carried her mysterious briefcase and had a satisfied expression on her face. "Tiffany, what are you doing out here?" asked Eleanor, her voice carrying a note of suspicion. "You should be resting." "I just wanted to get some fresh air," replied Tiffany, trying to keep her voice calm. "I feel so confined inside the house." "Confinement is necessary," said Eleanor firmly, placing the briefcase on the ground and approaching, "especially after your episode of mental confusion last week. We can't allow you to have more contact with disturbing elements." Disturbing elements. Tiffany knew that Eleanor was referring to Lily, and that only increased her curiosity about why the nurse was so determined to keep them apart. "Eleanor, can I ask you a question about Robert's first wife?" The nurse's reaction was immediate and revealing. Her eyes hardened, and a visible tension took over her body. "Why would you ask such a question?" "Just curious. Robert never talks about her, and you knew her. What was she like?" "She was complicated," replied Eleanor after a long pause. "Very much like you, actually. Always questioning, always wanting to do things she shouldn't." "It didn't end well for her." There was something threatening in the way Eleanor said those last words, something that made Tiffany feel a chill down her spine. "What do you mean by, 'it didn't end well'?" "I mean she didn't follow medical advice. She got stubborn, rebellious, and ended up losing the baby because of her own stubbornness," said Eleanor, each word chosen carefully. "You wouldn't want that to happen to you, would you?" The threat was clear, even disguised as medical concern. Tiffany shook her head, pretending to understand, but inside her mind was working furiously. There was something deeply wrong happening, and the child from the street seemed to be the only person who could see the truth. That night, while taking her medications obediently, Tiffany made a decision. The next morning, when Eleanor left for her mysterious activities in town, she would look for answers. She would start with the locked room of Robert's first wife, and somehow she would find a way to discover what had really happened to that woman. And maybe, just maybe, she would find a way to contact Lily again. The girl might be just a 4-year-old child, but she had seen something that all the adults around Tiffany had missed, and that could be the key to her salvation. The next morning, Tiffany pretended to be asleep when Eleanor entered her room for the morning checkup. The nurse watched her for a few minutes, checked her pulse, and then left silently. Minutes later, Tiffany heard the sound of the car leaving. Eleanor had left for another of her mysterious trips to town. This was her chance. Tiffany got up slowly, still feeling the effects of the previous night's medications, but determined to discover the truth. She needed to find a way to open the locked room of Robert's first wife. Going down the stairs silently, she looked for Maria, the oldest maid in the house. She found her in the kitchen, preparing lunch with a worried expression on her face. "Maria," said Tiffany softly, "I need your help." The middle-aged woman turned, surprised to see Tiffany out of the room so early. "Mrs. Sinclair, you should be resting." "Mrs. Eleanor said—" "Forget what Eleanor said," interrupted Tiffany, her voice gaining a firmness that she hadn't shown for weeks. "Maria, how long have you worked in this house?" 20 years, ma'am. Since before Mr. Sinclair's first marriage." "Then you knew his first wife. What was she like?" Maria hesitated, looking nervously around the kitchen as if fearing that someone might be listening. She was very much like you. Beautiful, kind, always worried about the employees. What happened to her, Maria? The truth. The maid lowered her voice almost to a whisper. She got very sick during the pregnancy. Always weak, always confused. Mrs. Eleanor took care of her, but she just got worse. And the baby was stillborn, Ma'am. It was very sad. And a few days later, the first Mrs. Sinclair also was gone. Tiffany felt a chill run down her spine. The story was very similar to what was happening to her. Maria, do you have the key to her room? I do, Ma'am, but Mrs. Eleanor said that no one can go in there. Eleanor isn't here, said Tiffany firmly, and I am the lady of this house now. Bring me the key. Reluctantly, Maria went to get the key from a drawer in the pantry. Her hands trembled as she handed it to Tiffany. Please, ma'am, be careful. There are something about that room that doesn't give me peace. Tiffany climbed the stairs with renewed determination, the key clutched in her hand. When she reached the locked door, she hesitated for just a moment before turning the key in the lock. The door opened with an ominous creak, revealing a room shrouded in twilight. She turned on the light and almost screamed at what she saw. The room was exactly as it had been left years ago. Clothes were still in the closet, beauty products on the vanity, and there was something disturbing in the way everything was preserved, like a morbid shrine. But what caught her attention the most was a small table in the corner of the room, covered with bottles of medication. Tiffany approached and picked up one of the bottles, reading the label. It was the same medication that Eleanor gave her every morning. Only the expiration date showed that it had expired 5 years ago. With her heart pounding, she examined the other bottles. They were all medications that she recognized from her own daily routine, all expired years ago. And in the middle of them, she found something that made her stagger. A small diary, hidden behind the medications. With trembling hands, she opened the diary and began to read. The first entries were cheerful, talking about the pregnancy, about the hope of starting a family with Robert. But gradually, the tone changed. I'm feeling more and more confused. Eleanor says it's normal, but something doesn't seem right. I can't remember things. I can't think straight. The medications are making me feel worse, not better. I tried to talk to Robert, but he trusts Eleanor completely. I discovered that Eleanor has been lying about my condition. I overheard her talking on the phone about maintaining the treatment until the end. I'm scared. The last entry was written in shaky, almost illegible handwriting. She's poisoning me, I'm sure now. I need to find a way to tell Robert, but she never leaves me alone with him. If something happens to me, I hope someone finds this diary. Tiffany dropped the diary, her legs giving way. Eleanor had murdered Robert's first wife slowly, with medications, and now she was doing the same thing to her. At that moment, she heard the sound of a car arriving. Eleanor had returned. With her heart racing, Tiffany picked up the diary and ran back to her room, locking the door to the first wife's room and returning the key to Maria along the way. She had just lain down in bed when Eleanor entered her room, carrying the mysterious briefcase and a fake smile on her face. "How are you feeling today, dear?" asked the nurse, placing the briefcase on the floor and approaching the bed. "Fine," lied Tiffany, hiding the diary under the pillow. "Just a little tired." "Great. I brought some new supplements for you. The pharmacist in town said they are excellent for pregnant women with your profile." Eleanor opened the briefcase and Tiffany saw that it was full of bottles of medication, syringes, and other substances that she didn't recognize. Her stomach churned as she realized that it was a complete poisoning kit. "Actually, I'm feeling nauseous," said Tiffany quickly. "Maybe we could postpone the medications until later." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Nonsense. You need to maintain the routine. Irregularities in treatment can be dangerous." The nurse prepared a syringe with a clear liquid, approaching the bed with determination. Tiffany recoiled instinctively, but there was nowhere to run. That's when she heard a sound that made her sigh with relief. Robert's voice arriving home, talking loudly to someone downstairs. Eleanor paused, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "I'll administer this later," she said, putting the syringe away, "but don't think you can avoid treatment indefinitely." After Eleanor left, Tiffany took the diary from under the pillow and held it against her chest. Now she knew the truth, but that also meant that she was in mortal danger. Eleanor would not hesitate to kill her, just as she had done with the first wife. She needed to find a way to escape, to tell Robert what was happening. But how to convince a man who had blindly trusted Eleanor for 15 years, especially when she herself was being medicated and could appear confused or delirious? Looking out the window, Tiffany saw a small figure moving among the trees on the outside of the property. It was Lily, still watching, still trying to protect her in her own way. The girl had tried to warn her from the beginning, and Tiffany hadn't listened. Now she needed to find a way to communicate with Lily. The child could be her only ally in a situation where all the adults around her were either being deceived or were part of the conspiracy. And time was running out. She could feel it in Eleanor's eyes that the nurse was losing patience and preparing to accelerate the process. If she didn't act soon, she would become just another silent victim of a woman who had turned medical care into a lethal weapon. That night, Tiffany pretended to swallow the medications that Eleanor brought her, hiding them under her tongue, and then spitting them discreetly into a glass of water when the nurse wasn't looking. It was risky, but she needed to keep her mind clear to plan her escape. For the first time in weeks, she managed to sleep without the chemical fog that used to envelop her thoughts. When she woke up the next morning, her mind was clearer than it had been in months. The contrast was terrifying. She finally realized how much she had been impaired by the medications. Eleanor entered her room with the morning tray, but this time Tiffany was prepared. "Eleanor, I'm feeling much better today. Maybe we can reduce the medications a little." "Absolutely not," replied the nurse dryly. "You had a crisis yesterday, remember? You were delirious, talking about things that don't exist. You need to maintain the treatment strictly." Tiffany didn't remember any crisis, but she didn't question it. Instead, she pretended to take the pills again, this time managing to hide 3 of them in the sleeve of her pajamas. When Eleanor left for her morning activities, Tiffany waited a few minutes and then carefully went to the window. As she expected, Lily was there, hidden behind the trees, watching the house with her watchful eyes. Tiffany made discreet gestures to attract the girl's attention, pointing to the back of the house where there was a window on the ground floor that led to the pantry. It was a more isolated location where they could talk without being seen. A few minutes later, she went down silently and found Lily waiting on the outside of the pantry window. The child seemed even thinner than the last time, her big eyes showing the constant hunger that accompanied her. "Lily," whispered Tiffany through the half-open window, "you were right about Eleanor. She's dangerous." "I knew it," replied the girl simply. "My eyes can see bad people. Did you find out anything?" Tiffany showed her discreetly the pills she had hidden. "She's giving me medications that make me confused and weak, and I found out that she did the same thing to my husband's first wife." Lily examined the pills with the seriousness of someone much older. "My mom knew a woman who got like that. She got sick and died because her boyfriend gave her poison every day." "Lily, I need your help," said Tiffany urgently. "Can you take a message to someone in town, to the police, or to a doctor?" The girl shook her head negatively. "Police don't believe street kids, and doctors cost money I don't have." Tiffany thought quickly. "What if I give you money, a lot of money? Could you find someone to help me?" "I can try," said Lily, but her expression was worried. "But the bad woman will get suspicious if you disappear. She watches you all the time." It was true. Eleanor had become even more vigilant in recent days, rarely leaving Tiffany alone for more than a few minutes. And worse, Robert seemed to be working more hours, coming home only for dinner and then locking himself in his office. "There's something else," said Lily hesitantly. "Yesterday I saw the bad woman talking to strange men in town. They looked like dangerous people." "What kind of conversation?" "I couldn't hear everything, but she talked about accelerating the process and making it look natural. And one of the men handed her a small box." Tiffany's blood ran cold. Eleanor was planning to kill her soon, and she apparently had help. Maybe other accomplices, other people involved in whatever it was that she was doing. At that moment they heard footsteps approaching the pantry. It was Maria coming to get ingredients for lunch. Lily disappeared quickly among the bushes, but not before whispering, "I'll try to find help. You need to hold on until I get back." Tiffany quickly went back to her room, arriving there seconds before Eleanor returned from her morning outing. The nurse carried a small bag and had a satisfied expression on her face that made Tiffany's stomach churn. "How are you feeling, dear?" asked Eleanor, placing the bag on top of the table and starting to organize some new bottles. "A little nauseous," lied Tiffany, watching the new medications that the nurse was preparing. "Perfect. I brought something special for the nausea. A more intensive treatment," said Eleanor, preparing a syringe with a liquid that looked different from the usual. Tiffany felt panic rising in her chest. "Maybe we could wait until Robert gets here. I'd like him to know about any changes in the treatment." "Robert gave me full authority over your medical care," replied Eleanor coldly, "and he's very busy today. He won't be back until late at night." The nurse approached with the syringe, and Tiffany realized that this time there would be no way to avoid it. She tried to get up from the bed, but Eleanor was faster, holding her arm with surprising strength. "Stay still," ordered the nurse. "This will hurt less if you don't resist." That's when something unexpected happened. The sound of something hitting the window made them stop. It was as if someone was throwing pebbles at the glass. Eleanor let go of Tiffany's arm and went to the window to investigate. Outside, she saw Lily standing in the middle of the garden, completely in sight, making provocative gestures towards the window. The child had decided to sacrifice herself to create a distraction. "That damn girl!" shouted Eleanor, her composure finally broken. "I'm going to end this situation once and for all." She put the syringe away quickly and ran out of the house, yelling to the security guards that Robert had hired to watch the property. "Get that child! She's trespassing!" Tiffany ran to the window and saw Lily being chased by two big men through the mansion's gardens. The girl was fast and knew the terrain around the property well, but the men were adults and had longer legs. Tiffany's heart tightened as she saw the child running desperately, clearly putting herself in danger to save her. Lily managed to reach the fence and started to climb it, but one of the security guards caught up with her and pulled her down. "No!" shouted Tiffany from the window, but her voice was lost in the commotion below. Eleanor approached Lily, who was being held by the security guards, and Tiffany could see from the nurse's expression that she was furious. The woman said something to the child that made Lily recoil in fear. After a few minutes of tense conversation, Eleanor made a gesture to the security guards, who released Lily. The girl ran away as fast as she could, but before disappearing among the trees, she looked up towards Tiffany's window. Even from a distance, Tiffany could see the determination in the child's eyes. Lily hadn't given up. She had only retreated to rethink her strategy. When Eleanor returned to the room, she was clearly shaken and angry. "I'm going to triple the security on this property," she said sharply, "and you're going to start an even more rigorous treatment. I can't allow external elements to disrupt your recovery." That night, Tiffany stayed awake thinking about Lily. The girl had risked her own safety to try to save her, and now she was alone out there, probably hungry and cold, planning a way to get help. But time was running out. Tiffany could feel that Eleanor was losing patience and preparing for the final blow. If Lily couldn't find help soon, it might be too late. Lily ran through the woods for almost an hour before stopping to catch her breath. Her lungs burned and her legs trembled, but she knew she couldn't give up. The blonde woman was in mortal danger, and she was the only person who could do anything. Sitting behind a large tree, the girl tried to think of a plan. The words that Eleanor had whispered when the security guards held her still echoed in her mind. "If you show up here again, I guarantee you will disappear forever, just like other inconvenient children have disappeared." The threat was real, but Lily had survived on the streets exactly because she knew when adults were lying and when they were serious. Eleanor was serious, and that meant that she really had made children disappear before. Walking through the small town, Lily watched the people passing by her as if she were invisible. It was always like that. A street child didn't exist for most adults. But maybe she could use that to her advantage. That's when she remembered the pharmacist. She had seen Eleanor talking to him several times, always buying medications in large quantities. If she could talk to him, maybe she would discover something useful. The pharmacy was in the center of town, an old building with a green cross flashing on the facade. Lily hid outside, watching the movement. The pharmacist was a fat, bald man who always seemed nervous, especially when Eleanor showed up. She waited until the establishment was empty and then entered, pretending to look for something in the aisles. The pharmacist saw her immediately. "Hey girl, get out of here! This is no place for beggars," he shouted. "For please, sir," said Lily in her most innocent voice. "I just want to ask a question about a lady who comes here." "What lady? Get out of here before I call the cops." "Mrs. Eleanor, the one who takes care of the rich man's wife." The pharmacist stopped shouting, his expression changing to something between fear and nervousness. "What do you want to know about her? Does she buy medicine to make people sick?" asked Lily directly. The man paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Sales are confidential. But I saw her buying strange things, and I saw her talking to bad men on the street." "Listen here, girl," said the pharmacist, his voice low and threatening. "You didn't see anything, you don't know anything, and if you're smart, you'll forget all this. People who ask too many questions about Eleanor tend to have problems." Lily realized that she had touched on something important. The pharmacist was afraid of Eleanor, which meant that she really was doing illegal things, and he knew it. "If I tell someone about the medications, will you confirm it?" she asked. "I'm not going to confirm anything, and you're not going to tell anything to anyone if you know what's good for you." But there was something in the man's eyes that Lily recognized. It was guilt. He knew he was helping Eleanor hurt people, and it was eating him up inside. Leaving the pharmacy, Lily continued walking through the town, trying to think of who else could help. That's when she saw a young woman in a white coat leaving the health clinic. It was the only doctor in town, Dr. Irene Walker. Lily had seen the doctor a few times, always treating the poor people of the town with kindness. If anyone would believe a street child, maybe it was her. "Doctor!" called Lily, running after the woman. "Doctor." Walker turned, surprised to see the dirty and thin girl running towards her. "Hi, little one. Are you hurt? Do you need help?" "Yes, I do, but it's not for me. It's for a lady who is being poisoned." The doctor stopped completely, her expression turning serious. "Poisoned? What are you talking about?" "The rich man's wife. The bad woman who takes care of her is giving her poison every day, just like she did with the first wife. Doctor." Walker knelt down in front of Lily, studying her face. "Girl, that's a very serious accusation. Are you sure of what you're saying?" "Yes, I am. I saw the lady passed out on the road. I saw when the bad woman got angry with me for being there. And the pregnant lady told me that she can't think straight, that she gets confused." "You talked to Mrs. Sinclair?" "I did. She's good, just like my mom was. But she's getting weaker and weaker because of the medicine." The doctor was silent for a few moments, processing the information. She had treated Tiffany at the hospital a few weeks ago, and had been intrigued by the symptoms. Severe malnutrition in a rich woman, mental confusion, extreme weakness, they were symptoms that could indicate gradual poisoning. "Girl, what's your name?" "Lily." "Lily, what you're telling me is very serious. If it's true, a person is in danger of death. But I need proof." "What kind of proof?" "Blood, samples of the medications, some physical evidence." Lily thought quickly. "What if I get the medications? Can you find out if they're poison?" "Yes, I can send them to laboratories in the state capital for analysis. But how are you going to get the medications?" "Leave it to me. But do you promise that you'll help if I bring them?" Dr. Walker hesitated. It was a very delicate situation. If the accusations were false, she could create a huge scandal involving the richest family in the region. But if they were true, "I promise," she said finally. "If you bring concrete evidence, I'll investigate and help." Lily smiled for the first time in days. She had finally found an adult willing to listen and act. That night she returned to the surroundings of the Sinclair mansion, now with a more elaborate plan. She knew that Eleanor had tripled the security, but she also knew that there was a way to get into the house that no one would suspect. During her weeks of observing the property, she had noticed that Maria, the maid, always went out the back door around 10 at night to throw garbage in the containers, and she always left the door unlocked for a few minutes. Hidden in the shadows, Lily waited patiently. When she saw Maria leave with the garbage bags, she counted to 60 and then ran silently to the back door. As she expected, it was unlocked. Entering the house, she moved like a ghost through the corridors. She knew exactly where she needed to go. She had seen Eleanor storing medications in a room on the first floor that seemed to be her personal office. The door was locked, but Lily had learned survival tricks on the streets. Using a hairpin that she had found in the trash, she managed to force the simple lock in a few minutes. Inside the room, she found exactly what she was looking for. A small refrigerator full of bottles and syringes, a table covered with medications, and a locked drawer that she managed to open with the same hairpin. Inside the drawer, she discovered something that made her swallow hard. It wasn't just normal medications. There were bottles with substances that she couldn't pronounce the names, but that had skull symbols on the labels. And there were photographs of different women, all looking sick and weak. Some had notes on the back: treatment completed, accelerated process needed, resisted more than expected. One of the photographs showed Robert's first wife, and on the back was written, "Case closed successfully, appear natural." Lily took some small bottles and 2 photographs, hiding them inside her torn blouse. She was leaving the room when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was approaching. Her heart raced. If she were discovered there, Eleanor would fulfill her threat to make her disappear. She quickly looked for a hiding place and found a small closet in the corner of the room. The footsteps stopped in front of the door. It was Eleanor, and she was talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, it's going to be tonight. I can't wait any longer. The situation is getting complicated. No, the husband won't suspect anything. It'll look like a natural complication of pregnancy. Of course, I'll need your help to clean up the scene afterwards." Lily held her breath inside the closet. Eleanor was planning to kill Tiffany that very night, and there were other people involved in the conspiracy. She needed to get out of there immediately and run to Dr. Walker with the evidence. Lily waited in absolute silence inside the closet until she heard Eleanor's footsteps moving away down the hallway. When she was sure that she was alone, she carefully left the hiding place and ran through the house, her small footprints silent on the wooden floor. Reaching the back door, she discovered that Maria had returned and locked the entrance. Her heart raced. She was trapped inside the house with evidence that could save Tiffany, but without a way to get out to get help. That's when she remembered a small window in the downstairs bathroom that she had noticed during her observations. It was narrow, but she was small enough to fit through it. Running silently through the corridors, She reached the bathroom and climbed onto the sink to reach the window. The window was locked, but with effort she managed to open it. She passed the evidence through first, then squeezed through the tight opening, falling to the other side with a muffled noise. Free from the house, Lily ran through the dark woods towards the town. She had no time to lose. Eleanor had said it would be tonight, and it was already past 11 o'clock. Arriving at the health clinic, she found everything closed and dark. She desperately knocked on the door, calling out Dr. Walker's name, but there was no response. The doctor was probably at home, and Lily didn't know where she lived. Thinking quickly, the girl remembered that she had seen the doctor talking to the priest of the church several times. Maybe he knew where to find her. The church was a few blocks away, and even though it was very late, Lily knew that priests sometimes stayed up late, taking care of parish matters. She ran through the deserted streets, her small legs starting to fail from exhaustion and fear. The church was lit, and she could see a figure moving inside. She knocked on the heavy wooden door with all the strength she had. "Father, Father, please help me!" she shouted. The door opened, revealing an elderly man with a white beard and a kind expression. Father Michael knew all the children in the town, including those who lived on the streets. "Lily, what are you doing here so late, child?" "Father, I need to find Dr. Walker. It's very urgent." "A lady is going to die tonight." The priest saw the genuine desperation in the girl's eyes and did not hesitate. "Irene lives on Flower Street, blue house with a white gate." "But Lily, what's going on?" "I don't have time to explain." "Thank you, Father." Lily ran again, her legs trembling with exhaustion. Flower Street was on the other side of town, and she was losing precious time. But she couldn't give up now. When she finally arrived at the blue house, she knocked on the door hard, calling out the doctor's name. After a few minutes that seemed like hours, Dr. Walker appeared at the door, wearing a robe and looking sleepy. "Lily, what are you doing here at this hour?" "Doctor, I brought the evidence," said Lily, pulling the bottles and photographs from inside her blouse. "And she's going to kill the lady tonight. I heard her talking on the phone." "Doctor." Walker became completely awake at the sight of the evidence. She took the bottles and examined the labels, her face paling as she read the names of the substances. "My God," she murmured. "This is warfarin in high doses, concentrated benzodiazepines. These are substances that can kill someone slowly. And there's more," said Lily, showing the photographs. "There are other women she killed." The doctor examined the photos and the notes on the back, her expression becoming more and more shocked. "Lily, this is evidence of serial murders. I need to call the police immediately." "But she said it's going to be tonight. There's no time." Dr. Walker looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. "You're right. We're going to the mansion first to try to stop what's happening, and then we'll call the police." She got dressed quickly, and the two left in the doctor's car towards the Sinclair property. During the way, Lily told everything she had heard and seen, including the phone conversation about cleaning up the scene. "Dr. Walker," said Lily suddenly, "what if it's already too late?" "Don't think about that," replied the doctor, speeding up the car. "We're going to get there in time." But when they arrived at the gates of the mansion, they saw that there were strange cars parked at the entrance, dark cars that didn't belong to the Sinclair family. The lights of the house were on, but there was a suspicious activity that could be seen through the windows. "They're already here," whispered Lily. "The men she talked about on the phone." Dr. Walker parked away from the gates and took out her cell phone. "I'm calling the police now. This is beyond what we can face alone." But while she was talking on the phone, Lily saw something that made her jump out of the car. In the window of Tiffany's room, there was a fight happening. Two male figures were holding a woman, while Eleanor prepared something that looked like a syringe. "I can't wait for the police," shouted Lily, running towards the house. "Lily, get back here," shouted the doctor, but the girl had already disappeared into the darkness. Using her survival experience on the streets, Lily managed to climb the wall of the mansion to the window on the first floor. Through the glass, she could see Tiffany struggling weakly against two men who were holding her, while Eleanor approached with a large syringe full of dark liquid. "This dose will end her in minutes," said Eleanor to the men. "It'll look like a sudden complication of pregnancy." "Embolism, maybe?" Lily banged on the window hard, making everyone in the room turn towards her. The distraction was enough for Tiffany to break free from one of the men and run away from the syringe. "That damn child again!" shouted Eleanor. "Get her!" One of the men ran to the window, but Lily was already climbing down the wall. She ran through the garden, shouting as loudly as she could, trying to wake up any neighbors and create confusion. "Help! Murderers! Help!" Her shouts echoed through the silent night, and soon lights began to turn on in the neighboring houses. At the same time, police sirens could be heard approaching. Dr. Walker had managed to convince them to come immediately. Inside the house, chaos had set in. Tiffany had managed to lock herself in the bathroom, while Eleanor and the two men nervously discussed what to do. "The plan failed," said one of the men. "We have to get out of here now." "No!" shouted Eleanor. "I'm so close to finishing this. I'm not going to let a street child ruin years of planning. The police are coming. We can hear the sirens." Eleanor looked out the window and saw the lights of the police cars approaching the gates. Her expression of fury turned to despair as she realized that she was cornered. "Very well," she said coldly. "If I can't finish the job, at least I'm going to take the witness with me." She took a gun from the drawer and ran out of the house, looking for Lily in the garden. The girl, who had hidden behind a tree, saw Eleanor approaching with the gun in her hand. It was then that Robert arrived home, returning from a business trip that had extended late. He saw the strange cars, heard the screams, and found his wife locked in the bathroom, crying and talking about poisoning and murder. "What's going on here?" he roared, his voice echoing through the house. Eleanor heard Robert's voice and knew that her world had collapsed. 15 years of trust, 15 years of absolute control over the family, all destroyed by a 4-year-old child who refused to be silent. When the police finally stormed the property, they found a chaotic scene. Eleanor being restrained by Robert, who had discovered the truth, two men trying to flee through the back of the house, Tiffany trembling but alive, and Lily hidden behind a tree, holding the evidence that would change everything. The interrogation of Eleanor lasted all night at the small-town police station. Confronted with the evidence Lily had collected and Tiffany's testimony, the nurse initially tried to deny everything, claiming she was only taking care of her employer's health. But when the police showed her the photographs of the other victims and the vials with lethal substances found in her office, her facade began to crumble. The sheriff, an experienced man who had seen many criminals over the years, recognized the signs of someone who knew she had been found out. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said, placing the evidence on the table, "we have enough evidence here to charge you with attempted murder, at the very least. But I suspect there's much more involved in this story." Eleanor looked at the photographs spread out before her, all the women she had treated over the years. Rich women, married to powerful men who somehow became inconvenient or obstacles to her plans. "You don't understand," she said finally, her voice filled with bitterness. "I dedicated my life to taking care of people. 15 years serving the Sinclair family, always loyal, always efficient." "Taking care of people doesn't include slowly poisoning them," the sheriff retorted. "They were weak," Eleanor exploded. "All of them. Spoiled ladies who didn't know how to appreciate what they had. Robert deserved someone who truly supported him, who understood his business, who wasn't a burden." The truth began to emerge during the confession. Eleanor had fallen in love with Robert years ago when she started working for the family, but he had never seen her as anything more than a competent employee. This had consumed her over the years, turning her unrequited love into something twisted and dangerous. "The first wife was very similar to Tiffany," she continued, the words coming out like a desperate confession. "Pretty, young, loved by everyone. But she was hindering Robert's business with her naive ideas about charity and helping the poor. The sheriff made careful notes. So you decided to kill her? I freed her, Eleanor said, with a coldness that made everyone in the room shiver. I freed her from the burden of a life she couldn't handle properly. And I freed Robert from a marriage that was hurting him. And Tiffany, what was the problem with her? The same thing. Another weak woman who didn't deserve to be beside a man like Robert. But this time, that damn kid interfered. Meanwhile, at the Sinclair mansion, Tiffany was being examined by Dr. Irene Walker. The effects of the medications were beginning to leave her system, and for the first time in months, she felt mentally clear. The blood test confirmed it, the doctor said, showing the results to Robert. Your wife was being systematically poisoned with a combination of sedatives, blood thinners, and other substances. It's a miracle that she and the baby survived. Robert held his head in his hands, devastated by guilt. How could I be so blind? I trusted her completely. She took care of my first wife. My God, she killed my first wife too. You couldn't have known, Tiffany said gently, holding her husband's hand. She was very convincing, very professional, and I even doubted my own perceptions for so long. If it weren't for Lily, Robert began, but couldn't finish the sentence. Lily was sitting in the corner of the room, still dirty and tired from the night before, watching the adults talk. She had saved a life. She had exposed a murderer, but she was still just a 4-year-old child with no family, no home, no guaranteed future. Where is Lily now? Asked Dr. Irene Walker, noticing the quiet girl in the corner. She's here, Robert replied. I don't know what to do. She has no family, lives on the streets, after what she did for us. Tiffany looked at the girl and felt her heart clench. During all those difficult months, Lily had been the only person who really cared about her well-being, the only one who had the courage to act when all the other adults had failed. Lily, she called softly, come here. The girl approached cautiously. Even after everything that had happened, she still maintained the natural distrust of someone who had learned to survive alone. You saved my life, Tiffany said, kneeling to be at the child's level. You saved my life and the life of my baby. How can I thank you? Lily thought for a moment, her expression serious beyond her years. You don't need to thank me. Good people help good people. But you deserve more than just gratitude, Tiffany insisted. You deserve a family, a home, a chance to be a child. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Robert, still processing everything he had discovered about Eleanor and about his own blindness, looked at Lily and saw something that touched him deeply. He saw a child who had shown more courage and loyalty than any adult in his life. Lily, he said, his voice choked with emotion, would you like to stay with us, forever, as part of our family? The girl looked from Robert to Tiffany, looking for signs that it wasn't just pity or obligation. What she saw in both their eyes was genuine love, sincere gratitude, and a real desire to take care of her. You really want me to stay? She asked, her voice small and vulnerable. We want it very much, Tiffany replied, hugging the girl. You're already part of our family. We're just making it official. But the happiness of the moment was interrupted when the sheriff arrived with disturbing news. Eleanor had confessed not only to the crimes against Tiffany and Robert's first wife, but had revealed a much larger network of criminal activities. There are more victims, the sheriff announced gravely. She confessed to at least 6 murders over the past 10 years, rich women in different cities in the region, and she wasn't working alone. What do you mean? Robert asked. There was an organization, people who identified targets, women married to rich men who could be problematic. Eleanor was just one of the executors. The 2 men we arrested last night are small fish compared to the real leaders. The revelation left everyone shocked. What they had thought was the isolated case of an obsessive woman was actually part of a criminal network that targeted vulnerable women married to powerful men. Are they going to come after us? Tiffany asked, instinctively pulling Lily closer. It's a possibility, the sheriff admitted. Eleanor knew a lot about the organization. With her arrested and talking, they may try to silence witnesses. Robert stood up, his expression determined. Then we're going to leave town, for as long as it takes. I'll take my family away from here until it's safe to come back. Where are we going? Lily asked, the first time she had used the word we, referring to herself as part of the family. To a safe place, Robert replied, smiling for the first time in days. To a place where we can start over, the three of us together. That night, while packing quickly, Tiffany found Lily sitting on the porch, looking at the stars. What are you thinking about, sweetie? I'm thinking I've never had a real family before, Lily replied. And now I have a mom, a dad, and even a little brother on the way. Tiffany sat next to her, placing her hand on her belly, where the baby was growing healthy, now that the toxic medications had stopped. And we've never had a brave daughter like you. Do you think the bad woman will try to hurt us again? We're not going to let that happen, Tiffany promised. Now we're a family, and families protect each other. As they spoke, neither of them noticed the dark figure watching the house from afar. Eleanor had confessed too much, revealed too many secrets, and there were very dangerous people who couldn't allow her or her surviving victims to continue talking. The Sinclair family's escape happened early the next morning. Robert had used his business contacts to secure a safe house in a small town in rural Nevada, far from anyone who might have connections to the criminal network Eleanor had revealed. Lily had never traveled so far from her hometown. Sitting in the back seat of the car, between suitcases and essential belongings, she watched the landscape change through the window. Green fields, distant mountains, small towns that seemed straight out of a dream. Everything was new and fascinating for a child who had only known the dusty streets of a town in rural Oklahoma. "Lily, are you okay?" Tiffany asked, noticing that the girl was very quiet. "I'm thinking," she replied. "I've never lived in a real house before. How do you do it?" The question touched Tiffany and Robert deeply. They had assumed that all children knew what it was like to have a home, but Lily had spent her entire conscious life on the streets, with no references about normal family life. "It's easy," Tiffany said gently. "You have your own room, your own things. You eat at the table with us, play in the yard, and there's always someone to take care of you when you're sick or scared. And can I really stay, even if I do something wrong?" "Family doesn't abandon family," Robert said, looking at her in the rearview mirror, "no matter what happens." They arrived at the new house in the late afternoon. It was a smaller property than the mansion, but cozy, surrounded by colorful gardens and overlooking the mountains. Lily got out of the car and stood still for a few moments, simply breathing in the fresh air and watching the butterflies that danced among the flowers. "It's pretty," she said simply. While Robert unloaded the suitcases, Tiffany showed Lily the house. The room that would be hers was small but cozy, with a real bed, an empty closet waiting for new clothes, and a window overlooking an orchard in the back of the property. "This is your space," Tiffany said. "You can decorate it however you want, put your toys, your drawings." "I don't have toys," Lily said, "or drawings. I only have these clothes." It was then that Tiffany realized that they would have to start completely from scratch with Lily. The girl owned nothing but the tattered clothes she wore. No toys, no memories, no personal objects that connected her to a normal childhood. "Tomorrow we're going to town to buy everything you need," she promised. "Clothes, toys, books, everything." On that first night in the new house, Lily had trouble sleeping. The bed was too soft compared to the hard places she used to sleep on the street. The silence of the countryside was strange to someone accustomed to urban noises. And mostly, the feeling of safety was so new that she didn't know how to deal with it. Around midnight, she left the room and walked through the house, exploring the dark corners. That's when she found Tiffany in the kitchen, drinking a glass of warm milk. "Can't sleep either?" Tiffany asked. "It's too quiet here," Lily said. "On the street there was always noise, cars, people, dogs barking. Here there's just crickets." Tiffany smiled. "You'll get used to it. I'm also finding it strange. After months of feeling confused and sick, now my mind is too clear. I keep thinking about everything that happened." "Are you afraid she'll come back?" "Eleanor is arrested. She can't hurt us anymore." "But there are other bad people, right?" the policeman said. Tiffany hesitated. She didn't want to scare Lily, but she also didn't want to lie to her. The girl had shown exceptional maturity in dealing with difficult situations. "Maybe," she admitted. "That's why we're here, in safe. If they come, I'll protect you," Lily said with the seriousness of an adult. "No, sweetie, now we protect you. You've done your part." The next morning, the family went to the neighboring town to buy clothes and supplies for Lily. The girl was fascinated with everything: the colorful shop windows, the clean and new clothes, the toys she had never had the opportunity to touch. In the children's clothing store, Tiffany let Lily choose what she wanted. The girl picked up only the essentials: a few blouses, pants, a simple dress, sandals. Her selection was practically austere for a child. "You can get more things," Tiffany encouraged. "Choose what you like." "Don't need much," Lily replied. "On the street I learned that the more things you have, the harder it is to run when you need to." The answer broke Tiffany's heart. Even now, safe with a family, Lily still thought like a street child who needed to be always ready to run. In the toy store, something similar happened. Lily looked at everything with fascination, but when Tiffany said she could choose what she wanted, she took only a small teddy bear and a set of crayons. "Why just that?" Tiffany asked. "The teddy bear is for sleeping less alone," Lily explained, "and the crayons are for drawing birds. I like to draw birds." "What kind of birds?" "Free birds, that can fly wherever they want." Robert, who had observed the entire interaction in silence, approached. "Lily, now you are also free, free to be a child, free to have toys, free not to worry about survival." "I know," she said, "but I'm still learning how to be free." 2 days later, while the family was beginning to establish a routine in the new house, they received an unexpected visit. It was Dr. Irene Walker, who had driven for hours to find them. "I brought news," she said, her expression serious. "Good and bad." "Start with the bad," Robert said. "Eleanor was found dead in her cell yesterday morning. Apparently suicide, but there are suspicions that she was silenced." Tiffany's blood ran cold. "That means?" "It means that the criminal network is still active and eliminating witnesses," the doctor confirmed. "But there's good news too. The state police have taken over the case. There's an ongoing investigation involving several cities in the region, and they believe they're close to identifying the leaders of the organization." "How long are we going to have to stay hidden?" Robert asked. "I don't know. But you did the right thing by leaving town." Lily, who had heard everything from the kitchen door, entered the room. "Is the bad woman dead?" "Yes," replied Dr. Irene Walker gently. "Then she can't hurt anyone." "Can't hurt anyone. But there are other bad people who might try to hurt us," Lily said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "It's possible," the doctor admitted. Lily was silent for a few moments, processing the information. Then she looked at Tiffany and Robert with a determination that surprised the adults. "Then we'll stick together and take care of each other," she said simply. "Family protects family." That night, after Dr. Irene Walker left, the family gathered in the living room. Robert had decided to tell Lily the whole truth about their situation, treating her as a full member of the family who deserved to know what was happening. "Lily, we might have to move again if it's not safe to stay here," he said. "That's okay," she replied. "As long as we're together, it doesn't matter where we live." "Aren't you scared?" Tiffany asked. "I'm a little scared. But on the street I was scared every day, and I was alone. Now I'm scared sometimes, but I have you. It's better." As they talked, none of them noticed the car that passed slowly by the road in front of the house, its occupants carefully observing the property before continuing towards the town. The hunt for the Sinclair family had begun, but this time they had a little warrior who had already proven to be capable of protecting the people she loved. 3 days after Dr. Irene Walker's visit, Lily woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling. Her survival instincts, sharpened by years living on the streets, were alerting her to some danger that she couldn't clearly identify. Silently getting out of bed, she went to the window and looked out at the moonlit garden. Everything seemed normal. The fruit trees swaying gently in the night breeze, the flowers closed for rest, the crickets singing their usual symphony. But there was something different. A subtle silence that hadn't existed on previous nights. The dogs on the neighboring property, who always barked at any movement, were completely quiet, and there was a strange shadow near the gate that she couldn't identify. Lily left her room and walked to Tiffany and Robert's room. She knocked lightly on the door and whispered, "There's someone outside." Robert woke up immediately, his entrepreneurial senses trained to react quickly to crisis situations. "What did you see?" "I didn't see it right, but something's wrong." The neighbor's dogs stopped barking. Robert got up and went to the window, carefully observing the perimeter of the property. Initially, he saw nothing suspicious, but then he noticed what Lily had perceived: an unnatural silence in the rural area that was normally filled with nocturnal sounds. "Tiffany, wake up," he whispered. "We need to get out of here." "What's going on?" she asked, still sleepy. Lily sensed something, and I trust her instincts. Quickly they began to get dressed and gather only the most essential items. Robert had prepared an emergency bag with money, important documents, and medications for Tiffany, exactly for a situation like this. Lily, who had returned to her room to get her teddy bear, looked out the window once more. This time she clearly saw 2 figures moving through the shadows of the garden, approaching the house in a coordinated and silent manner. She ran back to her adoptive parents' room. "They're here, 2 men in the garden." Robert picked up the phone to call the police, but found that the line was dead. He tried his cell phone, but there was no signal. Whoever was outside had blocked communications. "Through the back door," he whispered. "We have to get to the car." The family went down the stairs silently, Lily leading the way with the stealth skills she had developed on the streets. They reached the kitchen when they heard the subtle sound of someone forcing the lock on the front door. "They're coming in," Tiffany whispered, the fear evident in her voice. Robert held the car keys, mentally calculating the distance to the garage. It would be necessary to cross part of the uncovered garden, but there was no other option. They went out the back door and began to run towards the car. They were almost there when a powerful flashlight illuminated them, and a male voice shouted, "Stop where you are! We just want to talk!" "Keep running!" Robert shouted, pushing Tiffany and Lily towards the car. But when they reached the garage, they discovered that the car tires had been slashed. They were cornered. "Mr. Sinclair," said a calm voice behind them, "we really just want to talk." They turned and saw 2 men approaching. One was tall and thin, wearing a dark suit. The other was shorter and stouter, with a visible scar on his face. Both had the confident posture of people accustomed to intimidating others. "We have nothing to talk to you about," Robert replied, instinctively placing himself in front of Tiffany and Lily. "Oh, but we do," said the tall man. "You've caused a lot of problems for our organization. The nurse talked too much before." Departing. "Eleanor is dead. You killed her yourselves," Tiffany accused. "Eleanor was a weak link that compromised an operation of years," the man replied coldly. "But the bigger problem is you, witnesses who know too much." Lily, who was behind Robert, observed the situation with her mind sharpened by street experiences. She noticed that the 2 men were focused on the adults, considering her only a harmless child. And there was something they hadn't noticed, an open window on the 2nd floor of the house, which she could reach by climbing the plant-covered trellis. "What do you want?" Robert asked. "We want you to disappear," said the scarred man. Quietly, a tragic accident involving a family that was trying to start a new life. What if we refuse? It's not an option, the tall man replied, showing a gun from under his jacket. It was at that moment that Lily made a decision. She knew that the adults were focused on negotiating or finding a peaceful way out, but her experience on the streets had taught her that some people simply couldn't be persuaded or convinced. Silently, she moved away from the group and began to climb the trellis. Her movements were so subtle and natural that no one noticed until she had reached the second-floor window. "Where's the kid?" the scarred man suddenly asked, realizing that Lily had disappeared. Everyone looked around, and that's when they saw the girl at the second-floor window. But instead of trying to escape, she was doing something unexpected. She was turning on all the lights in the house and opening all the windows. "What does she think she's doing?" the tall man muttered. The answer came quickly. Lily began to shout as loudly as she could, "Help! Help! Armed men! Help!" Her voice echoed through the silent night, breaking the rural peace. Almost immediately, lights began to turn on in neighboring houses. Dogs began to bark. People came out on their porches to investigate the commotion. "Damn kid!" the scarred man shouted, pointing the gun at the window. But Lily had already moved, running from window to window, continuing to shout and creating as much noise as possible. She had transformed a situation where the criminals had total control into a chaos that attracted the attention of the entire neighborhood. "We have to get out of here," the tall man said, realizing that the plan had completely failed. "There are too many witnesses now." "What about the kid?" "Leave the kid. She's just a street urchin. No one will believe her." The two men ran to their car and drove off quickly, leaving the family in the garden. Moments later, neighbors came running, followed by the local police who had been alerted by the emergency calls. Lily ran down the stairs and into Tiffany's arms, who hugged her tightly. "How did you know what to do?" she asked. "On the street, I learned that when bad adults want to hurt you in secret, you make so much noise that they can't keep it secret anymore," Lily explained simply. Robert looked at the 4-year-old girl, who had saved the family for the second time. "You're amazing," he said, his voice full of admiration and paternal pride. "We're a family," Lily replied. "Families protect each other." But even with the criminals on the run, everyone knew they weren't safe. The organization had found them once. They could find them again. And this time, they would be prepared to deal with a child who was too clever for her own good. That night, while giving statements to the police, it became clear that they would have to move again, and that next time they would need to disappear completely, assuming new identities if necessary. "Where are we going now?" Lily asked. "Far away," Robert replied, "to a place where these men can never find us. And we'll stay together." "Forever," Tiffany promised. "Whatever happens, we'll stay together." But while they were making plans for another escape, none of them noticed the dark car parked at the end of the road, its occupants watching and planning a different approach. Next time, they wouldn't underestimate the child who had become their biggest threat. The Sinclair family's second escape was more desperate than the first. This time, they didn't have time to plan carefully or choose a safe destination. With the help of the local police, they left town before dawn, taking only the essentials in a borrowed van. Lily watched the landscape change through the window, noticing how this time the atmosphere was different. There was a palpable tension in the air, an urgency that hadn't existed on the first move. Tiffany held her hand tighter, and Robert constantly checked the rearview mirrors. "Where are we going this time?" she asked. "Far, far away," Robert replied. "A place where we can start with completely new identities." "New identities? New names? New documents? New history?" Tiffany explained gently. "It's the only way to protect ourselves." Lily processed this information in silence. She had spent 4 years without any identity, without documents, without officially existing. Now, she finally had a family and a legally recognized name, only to have to abandon everything again. "Can I choose my new name?" she asked. "Of course you can," Tiffany said, smiling despite the tense situation. "I want to keep being Lily. It's the only name that's always been mine." The simplicity and dignity of the answer touched the adults deeply. Even facing the need to hide, Lily was determined to maintain her essential identity. They traveled for 2 days, stopping only to rest in simple motels and eat at roadside diners. Robert used cash for everything, avoiding leaving electronic traces that could be followed. On the second day, they arrived in a small town in rural Montana, a place so isolated that it didn't even appear on most maps. It was an agricultural community where everyone knew everyone else, which would make it difficult for strangers to go unnoticed. "It's going to be different here," Robert explained, as they searched for a house to rent. "We're going to have to create a convincing story about who we are and why we came here." "What kind of story?" Lily asked. "We'll say that I'm a businessman who decided to retire early to take care of the family, that we bought a small property to live a simpler life. And I'm still your daughter." "Of course you are," Tiffany said quickly. "That will never change." They found a modest house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a large lot where they could plant a garden. It was very different from the mansions where they had lived before, but it had something welcoming that made everyone feel at peace. The landlord, an elderly man named Joe, greeted them with the hospitality typical of the interior. "Where are you folks from?" "From Oklahoma," Robert replied, using a half-truth. "We decided to look for a quieter place to raise our daughter. You did well. It's quiet here, no violence, no big city rush. The girl will like it." Lily watched the interaction with interest. It was fascinating to see how Robert managed to tell a version of the truth that sounded completely natural and convincing. In the first few weeks in the new town, the family carefully established their new life. Robert introduced himself as Robert Smith, a former businessman who had sold his business. Tiffany became Carla Smith, and Lily remained Lily Smith, officially adopted by the couple. The adaptation was surprisingly easy for Lily. After years on the streets and months of tension and danger, the simple and predictable life of the small town was like a gift. She could play in the yard without worrying, help Tiffany in the garden, explore the surroundings without fear. But it was when she started attending the local school that something unexpected happened. The teacher, a gentlewoman named Mrs. Johnson, immediately noticed something special about Lily. "She has exceptional intelligence," she commented to Tiffany during a meeting, "and a maturity that is not common in children of her age. Has she been through many difficult things?" Tiffany hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Lily was adopted a few months ago. Before that, she had a complicated life." "Explains a lot," the teacher said understandingly. "Children who go through trauma develop a sharp perception of the world. She'll need special care, but she has the potential to go very far." At home, Lily flourished in ways that surprised even Tiffany and Robert. She drew constantly, not just the birds she had always drawn, but also houses, families, flowery gardens. Her drawings showed a child who was finally allowing herself to dream of permanent happiness. "Lily," Tiffany said one night while looking at the latest drawings, "are you happy here?" "Very happy," she replied. "It's the first time I've felt really at home. Even having to change our names, having to lie about our previous life." Lily thought carefully before answering. "The lies are to protect us, but the love between us is true. That's what matters." 2 months after their arrival, when the family had completely established themselves in the community, they received an unexpected visit. It was an investigator from the state police, a serious man who had come specifically to find them. Robert tensed up when he saw the man at the door, thinking they had been discovered by the criminal organization. But the investigator's first words brought relief. "Mr. Robert Sinclair, I'm Investigator Carl Mendez. I have good news about the organization that was chasing you." "What kind of good news?" "We've arrested all the members of the criminal network. It was a coordinated operation involving 3 states. Your testimony and the evidence collected were fundamental to completely dismantling the organization. Tiffany appeared at the door, holding Lily by the hand. Does that mean... It means you're safe. You can return to your normal lives if you want to. The family looked at each other. After months of running and hiding, freedom was being offered again. They could return to their true identities, resume their old lives. What if we don't want to go back? Lily asked suddenly. What if we like the life we have here? The investigator smiled. Then you can continue exactly as you are. There's no obligation to return to your previous life. That night, the family talked at length about what to do. Robert could resume his business, recover his fortune, return to the mansion. Tiffany could return to the social activities she had known before the wedding. But when they watched Lily playing in the yard with the chickens they had bought, when they saw how she had flourished in the simplicity of rural life, when they realized how they themselves had found a peace they had never experienced before, the decision became clear. "We stay," Robert said. "We stay," Tiffany agreed. "We stay," Lily repeated, hugging them both. A week later, the investigator returned with official papers confirming their new identities. Robert Smith, Carla Smith, and Lily Smith would officially exist from then on, while Robert and Tiffany Sinclair would become just a memory of a previous life. "Are you sure this is what you want?" the investigator asked. "You're giving up a lot of money, a high social position." "We're trading it for something much more valuable," Robert replied, looking at his family. "We're trading it for peace, for a real life, for a family united by choice, not by convention." That night, Lily made a new drawing, a small house surrounded by gardens with 3 smiling figures in front. There were no birds flying away in this drawing. Instead, there were birds perched on the branches of the trees, singing cheerfully at home. "They don't need to fly away to escape anymore," she explained when Tiffany asked about the change. "Now, they have a place where they can stay forever." And for the first time since they had met, all 3 knew with absolute certainty that they had finally found their home. 6 months after establishing their new life in the rural town, the Smith family had completely integrated into the community. Robert worked as a consultant for small rural producers, using his business experience in a more personal and rewarding way. Carla had become one of the organizers of the local farmers' market, using the vegetables and fruits they grew in their garden, and Lily had transformed into the most beloved child in the school. Her exceptional intelligence and her ability to help other children who were going through difficulties made her a natural little leader. The teacher, Mrs. Johnson, often commented to other educators on how rare it was to find a child with so much empathy and wisdom. It was on a Saturday morning, while Lily was helping Robert fix a fence in the yard, that she asked a question that caught them by surprise. "Dad," she said. She had started calling them Mom and Dad naturally. "Do you miss being rich?" Robert stopped hammering and looked at the girl. "Why do you want to know that?" "Yesterday at school, the teacher was talking about how different people live in different ways, and I started to think that you gave up a lot because of me." "Lily, look at me," Robert said, kneeling to be at her level. "We didn't give up anything because of you. We gained everything because of you." "How so?" "Before we met you, our life was full of expensive things, but empty of important things. We had a big house, but we didn't have a home. We had a lot of money, but we didn't have true happiness." Carla appeared at the kitchen door, listening to the conversation. "Lily, you taught us what really matters in life," she said. "You taught us that courage has nothing to do with size or age. That family isn't about blood, it's about choice. That sometimes the greatest riches come from the people who seem to have the least." At that moment, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Dr. Irene Walker, who had driven for hours to find them in the new town. Her appearance initially brought a wave of worry. Could there be something wrong? Some new threat? "Don't worry," she said quickly, noticing the tension. "I came with a proposal." They sat on the simple porch of the house, Lily curious about what the doctor had to say. "After you left, I continued investigating cases similar to Tiffany's, Dr. Irene Walker began. I discovered that there are many women in vulnerable situations who could benefit from the experience you went through. What kind of proposal do you have in mind? Robert asked. I want to create a foundation to help women who are being abused or manipulated by people close to them, and I wanted you to be part of it. Carla leaned forward, interested. How would it work? We would use Tiffany's experience to identify signs of psychological and medical abuse, Robert's experience with business to structure the foundation properly, and Lily's story to show how even children can make a difference when they realize that something is wrong. Lily looked at her adoptive parents. Do you think we should help? What do you think? Robert asked. I think that if we can help other people like the bad woman hurt Mom, then we should do it. Dr. Irene Walker smiled. That was exactly the answer I was hoping to hear. In the following weeks, the Smith family worked with Dr. Irene Walker to develop the Foundation's project. They decided that it would be based in the town where they lived now, operating discreetly but effectively to help women in situations of risk. Robert used his business experience to structure the organization in a sustainable way. Carla became the coordinator of assistance to victims, using her own experience to identify and help women in similar situations. And Lily, despite still being a child, became a powerful symbol for the project, the girl who had saved an entire family simply by caring enough to act. I want you to know, Dr. Irene Walker said during one of the planning meetings, that your story is already making a difference. When I told other health professionals about how a 4-year-old child was able to identify signs that adults missed, they started paying more attention to children's accounts. Do children see things that adults don't see? Lily asked. Sometimes yes, the doctor replied. Adults can be deceived by appearances, by reputations, by social convenience. Children see what's really happening. 3 months later, the New Hope Foundation was officially inaugurated. The ceremony was simple, held at the town's community center, but it was full of meaning. Local authorities, health professionals, and members of the community were present. Lily was invited to speak during the ceremony. She stepped onto the small stage wearing the blue dress that Carla had made, especially for the occasion, her small hands holding a paper with some notes. My name is Lily Smith, she began, her voice clear and confident. A few months ago, I was a child living on the street and looking for cans to exchange for food. Today, I have a family who loves me, a home where I feel safe, and a chance to help other people. The audience was silent, touched by the simplicity and honesty of the girl's words. I've learned that no matter how small you are, if you see someone being hurt, you can do something to help. Sometimes it's telling a trusted adult. Sometimes it's making noise when bad people want to do things in secret. And sometimes it's just caring enough not to give up. She looked at Robert and Carla in the audience, then continued, I've also learned that family isn't about where you're born. It's about who chooses to love you. And that sometimes the greatest changes begin with small acts of courage. When she finished, the audience applauded standing. But what touched everyone the most was the expression of pure pride on Robert and Carla's faces as they watched their adopted daughter speak with a wisdom that far exceeded her few years. After the ceremony, as the family walked back home under the starry sky of the interior, Lily made an observation that perfectly summarized their journey. You know what's funny? She said. When I lived on the street, I always drew birds flying away because I wanted to escape. But now I draw birds singing in the trees because I've finally found a place where I want to stay. And we found a daughter we never knew we were looking for, Carla replied, hugging her. And I found a family I always wanted to have, Lily completed. That night, before going to sleep, Lily made a final drawing to mark the special day. It was the image of the new foundation, surrounded by people helping each other. In the sky, there were birds, but this time not flying to escape, but flying in joyful circles, celebrating. In the lower right corner of the drawing, she wrote in her careful handwriting, "Smith family, forever." When Robert and Carla saw the drawing the next morning, they knew that their journey of transformation was complete. From a wealthy but disconnected family, they had become a true family, united by love and by the common purpose of making the world a little better. And it had all started with a 4-year-old girl who refused to ignore the suffering of a stranger on the road. A year had passed since the inauguration of the New Hope Foundation, and the small organization had already helped more than 50 women in situations of vulnerability. What had started as a local project had expanded to neighboring towns, creating a support network that grew organically through word of mouth. Lily, now 6 years old, had become a kind of unofficial mascot of the foundation. Her story inspired not only the women who sought help, but also other professionals who joined the volunteer work. She had learned to read and write with impressive speed, and often helped Carla by writing encouraging letters to women who were in temporary shelters. One spring morning, while the family was having breakfast in the simple but cozy kitchen, a letter arrived that would change everything once again. It was from the federal government, signed by a high-ranking official from the Department of Justice. Robert opened the envelope with curiosity, but his expression changed drastically as he read the contents. "What is it?" Carla asked, noticing the change. "They want to give us an award," Robert said, still processing the information. "The Department of Justice wants to recognize our contribution to dismantling the criminal network and for the work with the foundation." "An award," Lily repeated, not fully understanding what that meant. "It's an award that the government gives to people who have done important things to help the country," Carla explained. "But there's a condition," Robert continued, reading further. "The ceremony would be in Washington, D.C., with press coverage. Our story would be publicized nationally as an example of citizenship." The silence that followed was heavy. After more than a year living in peaceful anonymity, the prospect of national exposure was intimidating. They had built a life based on simplicity and privacy, away from the spotlights and public attention. "Do we have to accept?" Lily asked. "We don't have to do anything," Robert replied. "The choice is ours. But if our story helps more people recognize dangerous situations, maybe it's worth it," Carla pondered. That afternoon, they received another visit. It was Dr. Irene Walker, but this time accompanied by a man they didn't know, an investigative journalist from the Capitol who had followed the case from the beginning. "I know it may seem intrusive," said the journalist, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, "but your story has the potential to save many lives. I'm working on a special report on networks of domestic abuse disguised as medical care." "Our concern is with privacy," Robert said. "We've built a simple life here. We don't want spotlights." "I understand perfectly," the journalist replied, "but consider the impact you could have. How many women are currently being poisoned by people they trust, and how many children are seeing signs that adults ignore?" Lily, who had listened to the entire conversation, approached. "Can I ask something?" "Sure," said the journalist, lowering himself to be at her level. "If we tell our story, will other girls like me know that they can help when they see people being hurt?" "Yes, exactly that. And will other mums like mine realize when someone is trying to hurt them?" "Yes." Lily looked at Robert and Carla. "Then I think we should tell our story." The moral simplicity of the child cut through all the adult complications. If telling their story could save even one life, it was worth any personal inconvenience. 2 weeks later, the family was in Washington, D.C. for the awards ceremony. Lily wore a simple white dress that Carla had made, and carried with her the teddy bear she had bought on the first day of her new life, now her lucky charm. The ceremony was held at the White House with the presence of government officials, representatives from human rights organizations, and journalists from across the country. When it was Robert's turn to speak, he surprised everyone by making a special request. "I would like my daughter Lily to speak for our family," he said. "After all, she is the one who truly deserves this honor." Lily approached the microphone, which was adjusted to her height. For a moment she observed the audience full of important adults looking at her. Then, with the natural confidence she had developed throughout her journey, she began to speak. "My name is Lily Smith," she said, her clear voice echoing through the solemn hall. "2 years ago, I was a family-less girl, living and looking for food on the streets. Today I'm here receiving an award from the government, but the truth is, I didn't do anything special." Low murmurs ran through the audience, all curious about where she was going with this. "I just did what anyone should do when they see someone being hurt. I tried to help. The difference is that I was small enough that the bad people didn't take me seriously, and that gave me the chance to discover the truth." She paused, looking at Robert and Carla in the front row. "But the real prize isn't this pretty medal. The real prize is having a family who loves me and being able to help other people through our foundation. The prize is knowing that every woman we manage to help, every child who learns to trust their instincts, every person who doesn't give up on doing what's right, makes the world a little better." The audience was completely silent, captivated by the wisdom emanating from the small child on stage. "So I want to ask one thing. Of all the important adults who are here today," Lily continued, "listen to the children. We see things that you sometimes miss. And when a child says something is wrong, even if it seems impossible, please investigate, because sometimes we are the only witnesses that the bad people can't intimidate or deceive." When she finished, the silence lasted several seconds before the audience exploded in applause. Many of those present were visibly moved, and Lily could see tears in the eyes of several adults. After the ceremony, during the reception, several people approached the family. Representatives from other women's protection organizations, educators interested in developing child awareness programs, and even politicians wanting to know how they could support similar initiatives. But the most meaningful conversation was with a girl of about 8 who was accompanying her mother, a government employee. The child approached Lily shyly. "Hi," she said softly. "I liked what you said." "Thank you," Lily replied. "What's your name?" "Sophia, and I think there's something wrong at my friend's house. Her stepfather does weird things when her mum isn't around." Lily looked at the girl with the seriousness she had learned to apply to situations like this. "Have you told your mum?" "I tried, but she said I shouldn't get involved in other people's lives." "Sophia," Lily said, holding the girl's hand, "sometimes protecting friends is more important than not getting involved. Come, I'll introduce you to my mom. She knows how to help." That night, at the hotel in Washington, D.C., the family gathered to process everything that had happened. The repercussion of the ceremony had been enormous, with Lily's speech being broadcast on all the major news channels in the country. "Do you realize what you did today?" Robert asked Lily. "I talked about our family," she replied simply. "You inspired an entire country," Carla said. "Thousands of people heard your words today." "And Sophia? Are we going to be able to help her friend?" "It's already being investigated," Carla confirmed. "A social worker will visit the family tomorrow." Lily smiled, satisfied. For her, that was the most important part of the whole day. The possibility of having saved yet another child. 6 months later, back in their small town in Montana, the New Hope Foundation had expanded dramatically. Donations were arriving from all over the country, volunteers were offering to help, and more importantly, reports of children being taken seriously by adults had increased significantly. One sunny afternoon, Lily was in the yard drawing when Robert and Carla approached with mysterious smiles. "We have a surprise for you," Robert said. "What kind of surprise?" "A small surprise, but a very important one," Carla said, placing her hand on her belly that had begun to grow again. Lily looked, her eyes widening as she understood. "I'm going to have a little brother." Or a little sister, Carla confirmed. Lily jumped for joy, hugging them both. Then she ran inside the house and came back with paper and crayons, immediately starting to draw. "What are you drawing?" Robert asked. "Our family," she replied, focused on the paper, now with 4 people. When she finished the drawing, she showed it to them. It was the image of the small house, surrounded by the flowered garden they had cultivated together. 4 smiling figures were in front: Robert, Carla, Lily, and a small baby in Carla's arms. But what caught their attention the most was what she had drawn in the sky. Instead of the solitary birds from her old drawings, or even the birds singing in the trees from her more recent drawings, there was an entire family of birds flying together in formation, protecting each other during the journey. "Now we're a flock," Lily explained, "and flocks never fly alone." At that moment, watching their adopted daughter draw her growing family with love and hope, Robert and Carla knew that their journey of transformation was truly complete. They had started as strangers united by chance and danger, but they had become a real family, forged by love, by conscious choice, and by the shared determination to protect and care for each other. And all of this had been possible thanks to a small and courageous girl who had refused to ignore the suffering of a stranger, proving that sometimes the greatest heroes come in the smallest packages, and that true love can flourish in the most unexpected places. Years later, when Lily was an adult and told her story to her own children, she would always end with the same phrase: "I learned that family isn't about blood or money. It's about the people who choose to stand by your side when everything falls apart, and who never give up on you, even when you're just a tiny little girl that no one else takes seriously." If you liked this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.